today's topic is going to be asking old gays queer questions.
Oh, rude. Who's the old gay? Oh, you're the old gay.
I'm the old gay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Look at it. Hello, and welcome back to
What's the safe word?
I'm Amp,
I'm Mr. Kristofer.
And I'm Race Bannon.
and today we're asking queer questions of some of our older,
Mature. I prefer
mature.
Yeah.
Sure, Jan.
In the spirit of Ask Anything episodes that we do here, we generally focus on a specific kink or kink topic, but today I wanted to focus on a specific generation and people that have lived through a few things throughout their kinky lifestyles. So today I have, of course, Daddy.
Hi.
And our good friend Race Bannon.
Hey.
And while Daddy is experienced in the community in many ways, and he's definitely a few years older than I am, how would you describe yourself, Race?
Activist, organizer, writer.
Kinkster.
Kinkster. Yeah,
Slut?
Slut?
Yeah.
Slut. Yeah, go. Just pick a
Goes
word.
on and on.
That's such a great resume. You put that.
And today we're outside, so if you hear other noises that are in the city, no you don't. But this is also the On Guard set, so if you're at all curious about learning about more of topics that we might get into today, go check it out. And so today, every time we say the word community, at home, if you're playing this fun drinking game, you take a nice sip of water. Yeah.
Hey, community.
But water.
Sipping on that true tea, hunty.
Well, or I mean, I'm not gonna gatekeep.
What's gatekeep mean?
Not a question. So, online, I asked you guys for questions to ask these old gays. Daddy, do you mind giving me an explosion? The first question from the other Mr. Valentine says, what is that gift from? Do you guys know what that gift's from? I do.
I don't.
It's a leather guy dancing.
They failed the test.
I don't know. Is that a young
We're
kid?
bad old gays.
It's the character that Tom of Finland usually draws from the Tom of Finland movie.
Oh,
okay.
that's the Tom of Finland movie.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
which actually is a really good movie as far as
Yeah.
queer history and just the leather culture in general. How would you describe Tom of Finland as an artist?
Tom of Finland is one of the most important artists in gay men's leather culture, in large part because he popularized a certain kind of imagery that a lot of gay men sort of attach their sexualities to. And I think he was one of the most important kinky artists we've ever had. He was a supremely nice human being.
Did you know him?
I did know him,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Next question. Wait, you knew Tom of Finland?
I did. I didn't know him incredibly well, but I met him a number of times at the Tom of Finland house in Los Angeles. And he was a really quiet, kind of gentleman. I don't know how else to describe him. I really liked him a lot.
Huh.
Yeah.
Next question from the Raven King asks, did the HIV/AIDS crisis decrease or increase the community that was moving to San Francisco? And I think that's important to ask because when people were being ousted out of the military or other, maybe more high-profile jobs, they usually came to San Francisco because it was such a welcoming community. But what do you guys think on that?
I think it's kind of a wash. I think a lot of people probably moved here because it was a much more welcoming place for people who were HIV positive. The healthcare here was superb. At the time, it was cutting edge. The community supported people who were positive in a way that they might not have gotten back home. At the same time, I think a lot of people left San Francisco, especially if they were sick, to go home to be taken care of by family and friends. So I'm not sure it's an easy question to answer. It was some in, some out.
And a lot of families did not take care of
No.
people who were sick. I mean, people were scared of you if you had HIV and AIDS. They were terrified of catching it.
Who took care of you then?
The lesbians.
Yeah.
The lesbians all stepped up and took care of the gay men.
They really did. And
yeah.
we, to this day, I think, owe a tremendous thanks to the lesbian community for taking care of us at a time when we really needed it.
Let's go lesbians.
Let's go, lesbians! We go, lesbians, come on! Excuse me, lesbians coming through!
The next question from Thunder My Lullaby asks, was there a broader worldview of gay communities then, or is that coming more to light today?
No, it wasn't very out. And you had to go find that community. It didn't come to you. It wasn't in the media. It wasn't, there weren't that many publications, and there certainly wasn't social media back then. You had to go find it.
As a matter of fact, Twin Peaks is the first gay bar that had glass windows on it. So it was the first time you could look in on the queers having a drink.
A bar in the Castro,
It's called Twin
literally
Peaks.
across the street from Daddy's house. But how was it living through that? Like having to almost feel like you're living underground, but also having to deal with that compounded with the epidemic. Like how were you guys able to find each other and just have open conversations about all of that?
It was like multiple coming out. You came out as gay, you had to come out as HIV positive, you had to come out as kinky. So you just found the people that would support you and relied on them.
I think we had reached a point where we were fairly public in the 80s. And so you could find community, you could find bars, you could find resources, which was good because when HIV did hit, we needed a community to rally. So I think it was easier to do that than it would have been maybe in the 60s and 70s.
The next question actually kind of talks about commingling generations as well. It comes from Rubber Bear, who asks, how do you deal with ageism in the gay community when you're talking with the younger generation who came up post-AIDS crisis? I see this conversation a lot when people are like talking about PrEP, you know, and how flippant the younger generation is when it comes to their own safety. Like, how do you deal with not only ageism, but maybe the change of the times when it comes to health and the way we live our lives?
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed lately, is because PrEP is so prevalent now that it has made HIV and AIDS like a non-issue. It's the only STI that's now preventable. And I have known cases where people skip their PrEP for 2 or 3 days or were between and then caught HIV because it's not as serious in their mind as it was in our mind. And they didn't see their friends die, and so it's not as prevalent in people's minds or as serious. And that's one of the main things I've seen in the last 6 years.
I mean, my first partner died, so it really hit me pretty hard fast. I think that the younger generation, for the most part, does respect that we went through that. It might not be at the forefront of their thinking, but I have never really felt disrespected around that. That said, we did all that we did in terms of activism so that they would have PrEP, so that they would have knowledge, so they would, etc., so that they can live the sexual lives they want to live. So I'm not one of these old guys going, well, you kids, we had to wear condoms every time, always. But I really think that most young people respect that we went through a really shitty number of years where it was a war zone. I would pick up the phone and wonder who died next. So, but I do think there's enough education out there around HIV and the AIDS crisis that people do know.
Thank goodness. Well, then let's take something that is a bit heavier and put a spin on it. This next question from Pup Arrow asks, what are some things that you've enjoyed about seeing change within our community?
Oh.
Like, what are some good changes you've seen over the years?
One of the things I've enjoyed is it seems like your generation kinksters are much more informed because of the internet. You explore kinks faster. This is why you said you can't be a young dom. Yes, you can. I have been playing with a lot of them, and it just blows my mind that a 26-year-old knows what they know.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. We had one magazine to read. So I've enjoyed that. I've loved seeing the puppy community grow because I feel like it's like fetish light, and it allowed people to explore their kinks in a fun way, where I think BDSM in our leather day was very impact play and the protocol-y thing that scared a lot of people.
Protocol-y.
Protocol-y.
Yeah, it's like a border collie, but
I actually think that's true. I was going to insert the word fun. I mean, we had a fun, don't get me wrong. We got a lot of fun, but it was a much more serious kind of fun.
Yeah. So it was a dungeon.
It was it. And I love the fact that the kinks have diversified so much and people can find their niche.
Yeah.
Whereas once upon a time, if you didn't fit that kind of Leatherman thing and that BDSM-centric kind of play, you weren't a kinkster.
Yeah, I mean, you see it in just the clothes that are available now, the fetish clothing and the bright colors and all the neoprenes. It's more fun, it's more playful, it's not as serious.
Well, then I have a question. Who were your role models growing up? Whether it was sex or kink or just queerness in general? Did you ever have someone you looked up to?
We didn't have a lot, and if we had anybody who was even remotely sexual in the media, we glommed onto it very quickly because we didn't have a lot of that. In movies, people slept in separate beds. They didn't even sleep in the same bed.
That's why the people are trashing Madonna right now. At that time, she was one of the only entertainers that embraced HIV, gay men, didn't care about race, sang about it, sexuality, BDSM. She explored all of that in the public eye.
And sexuality from a very sex positive perspective.
Very sex positive.
So yeah, no, I give lots of props to her for being on the cutting edge of that.
For me, I was really fortunate because when I came out and I knew I was into BDSM, I was in college 20, I would run to the dirty bookstore and buy Drummer magazine, and I would read in this Drummer magazine Guy Baldwin, Michael Bales, Race Bannon, Graylin Thornton.
Who's the last one?
And so, and then I moved to LA and I fell into this Race Bannon crowd, and it was all these mentors I had been reading and jacking off to, and they all took me in and they became my mentors. I've known Race for 35 years now.
Yes.
This next question would be good if we could go back in time, from Goddess, who asks, if you could say anything to your previous self coming out or to someone you've known or lost, what would you say?
I would say, don't be afraid of what people think. Be yourself. And I would have come out earlier than I did.
One of the axioms I go by in my life is your level of happiness is directly inversely proportionate to how much you care what other people think.
Do you carry the 2 and multiply by 5 at
Yes.
the same time? Okay.
But the less you care that people think, the happier you're going to be. When I first came out as a Kinkster, I was very concerned that I dressed the right way, that I act the right way, that I didn't have a misstep, that somehow I appeared to be this wise, experienced Leatherman. And the truth is, most people really don't give a damn.
And the ironic thing is, as you get older, you do care less what people think of you.
You really do.
So it really is a juxtaposition with age.
Speak for yourself. I care. I still care. Actually, though, I'm curious because I came out around 17, 18, and it was strictly because my parents were like, let's do more religion in your life. And I said, no. When did you guys come out?
I came out in college to my parents. And it was a very nerve-wracking experience for me because I was terrified of what they would think, and they accepted me. So once that had come out, I felt like myself.
Yeah. I came out to myself officially when I was 16. I came out to other people, family included, when I was 17.
Oh, okay. That's actually
very young.
Kind of, yeah. No, it's actually younger than me, and I was in definitely a more open, accepting environment, at least with friends and family. But would you say that proportionately affected how or when you came out?
I felt like I had to come out because I was freshman in college, and I was doing a lot of gay nightlife things on the weekends, and I just felt like I couldn't hide my life adequately, and I needed to come out, and it was hard, but I needed to do it for myself.
Yeah, as I gained more and more gay friends and saw their lives, it was harder and harder for me to keep it a secret.
I was going to an art school, so I wasn't about to hide it from anyone. They definitely all knew, so I was just getting my parents on the same page. Next question. This next one is from Chaos Daddy.
Chaos Daddy?
Yeah.
I love Chaos Daddy.
I know a few Chaos Daddies. Who asks, what is a kink that once was very prevalent that you don't see much of anymore? What about community spaces has changed you wish would come back? So 2-parters there. Kink that you don't really see prevalent anymore, and then we'll go to the second part.
Actually, we were just talking about this yesterday. We used to see hooking, cover your ears. The puppy doesn't like needles and piercings, but play piercings used to be more prevalent in play parties and public spaces, and I don't see that very much anymore.
I don't see it as much. I still see it occasionally. I don't see the hooking very much, but I do see play piercing. There aren't that many things that we used to do that aren't happening now. I think there's kinks now, way more kinks than happened then. So I'm not seeing older kinks not happening.
It's not going to happen.
I'm seeing just a lot of new kinks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also I'm seeing a lot more kinks just get names because you guys didn't have names for a lot of the stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
You didn't have TikTok to show you all the names that exist via hashtags or just trends that pop up.
I actually see more what were obscure kinks like fisting in our day.
Yeah.
That was a advanced level player is now a beginning level for your generation, and everyone is fisting.
To be clear, it's not a beginner sport,
No,
but it is a very entry-level kink that a lot of people get into because it's very I would say
And
popular.
I think that's because dildos,
Thank you, dildos.
technology has
Yeah.
gotten better with the toys. Thank you, dildos.
Thank you for being a friend.
And the second part, what about community, take a drink, spaces has changed that you wish would come back? Without
for it.
being canceled.
Without being canceled. Well, I do miss. I like everything being open and more people being accessible. But as a gay man, I appreciate spaces that only have gay men in them sometimes, and I feel that's something that's frowned upon now.
Why?
Because people think you're not being inclusive of everyone.
There's a difference between being inclusive and not being respectful. And I think when you open up a space sometimes that people come in with a lack of respect or a lack of understanding of the history of a bar or a club or a community space. And it's not that people aren't allowed to come to the bars, but if you're not being respectful in those bars is when people get upset.
So I think it's perfectly okay to say that we miss entirely gay male spaces, especially leather spaces and kink spaces, while at the same time saying we fully understand that we have a crisis of real estate, we have fewer places to go, we have to share this queer space with a lot of people. Completely understandable. So, but we still get to miss it.
Especially since like dating apps and other forms of media and just spaces to talk or socialize are so different nowadays. We have so many different apps and places and things where you can woof and scruff and bark and
I actually enjoy that better because I am able to hook up with someone who's very specific to the kinks I'm into, where I couldn't do that in a bar before. You could be handsome, but you wouldn't be into the kinks I was in. So now our spaces have become much more social than cruisy, and the cruising is happening online.
It's odd you would talk about bar spaces because this next question from Cooper asks, how did people find queer bars or clubs before the internet, especially in situations where they needed to stay closeted in an unaccepting area?
How did they find them?
Yeah.
We had something called the Spartacus or Damron Guide, which was like a telephone book that was put out yearly of the gay bars and spaces in every city around the world.
And that was Bob Dameron Guides,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Correct.
Now, the problem with that is that's too many spaces to keep track of, and it's only printed once a year. So you could get to a city, say in Barcelona, and go to the club with the address and it not be that club anymore. So a lot of it was outdated, but half of the information was true.
You hope that you could stumble upon that Dameron's Guide or the Spartacus Guide. And imagine if you didn't and you had no clue where to go, you had to stumble on it. I stumbled on my first gay bar. I literally walked by a bar and went, and I walked in and
What was his name?
it was called the Glory Hole. It really
Stumble
was.
into a glory
things
hole
tipped you
race,
off.
but
I didn't know. I personally miss street cruising and hardcore bar cruising a lot. There was this thing, you would walk ahead and then you'd turn back and look. There was this
can we all look away from the camera and then cruise at the camera?
It was the gay cruise bend and snap.
Yes, it was. Oh my God, the bend and snap works every time. It was our way of connecting, and you're right. You would meet somebody, cruise them, and very often that's the person you ask, well, where do I go?
And a successful cruise was if you maintained eye contact for just a little too long. So that's
Like
a little
almost uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you knew they were, this is on.
Can you give us an example? Almost. There you go, yeah. Oh, sexy. Great. Okay, get out of here.
Works every time.
But that does actually do the next question really well because it does revolve around cruising. And Geeky Guy asks, kind of interested in hearing more views on cruising, especially from Mr. Kristofer. I know that at that time a lot of gay organizations didn't like it because of its depiction of the community. And I think they're talking about the movie Cruising.
Yeah.
So what is your opinion on the movie?
So I thought the movie was actually good. It was a serial killer movie.
Spoiler.
But I thought Al Pacino did a great job portraying an undercover cop playing a gay man in the leather bar. I didn't have a problem with the movie.
I didn't personally. I understood how some did, because they felt it was the dark underbelly of gay life, which is where I lived much of the
But it
time.
was
What's wrong with the dark underbelly of your life? I don't live the dark underbelly.
It was accurate.
It was. So when they show like the bar scene, that was very accurate. I had been in that space.
Were you an extra in that movie?
I was not an expert in that movie, no. But so it actually portrayed relatively accurately men's leather subculture. It just happened to have, unfortunately, a criminal undertone to it. So
The
therefore,
movie was a serial killer. I didn't think that it meant that all leather guys are serial killers. I think it was just the backdrop of that movie.
So would you recommend seeing the movie Cruising?
I think it was a good movie.
Give it 2 thumbs up.
I actually give it a thumbs up. I think, and certainly if you're kinky, it's a cultural reference point. So I think watching it just so you have an opinion about it is not a bad thing.
Okay. Next question. Speaking of the next generation of gays that came up after, Flint asks, has the next generation of gays been more or less tolerant of the old guard traditions and customs? And if so, in what ways?
I wouldn't use the word tolerant. I think
What word would you use?
I think misunderstood. When people talk about old guard, they think there's all these customs and rules and stuff that we used to abide by. I never saw that. I never lived that.
No.
So I think it's a projection of how they pictured us to be. I don't think that's how we really were.
Well, I mean, if you would stop lecturing us all the time, then we
I'm not lecturing.
I think it was more of we assumed that there were rules that you had to do and that they were very strict on, but it was more of guidelines.
Some Leathermen played with protocols, so they had rules of like how you presented yourself if you were a sub to a master, those kind of things. And that's kind of, some people still do that. I do that still. But I think people think it was much more rigid than it really was.
I think buried inside that question is the assumption that younger kinksters don't respect the old ways. There's an assumption that they should be that's some sort of idealized, romanticized way that Leathermen should be, that kinksters should be. Yeah, right, exactly. And I don't think anyone ever felt that way.
Now, that being said, I do see why they feel that way, because older generations like myself, things are changing, things change, and we don't like, nobody likes change.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, it used to be, we could do this and this and this back here in the bar, and now we can't. So yeah, we can be a little grumpy sometimes, and I think that comes through from the younger generation.
But I would say that generally, I think our generation is pretty good about listening to someone of a old generation or old guard
And that's what we found with On Guard Salon, lots of the comments. The younger generation, which is what watches us, because we don't watch YouTube, they are highly fascinated by where we came from, because there isn't education that's out there provided for new kinksters, new people who are gay. So it is our stories, and there's got to be a way for us to share those stories, and I think they're grateful for them.
And let me just say, I've never felt disrespected by a younger kinkster in any kind of kink space as a sort of more traditional kind of Leatherman, but I have seen the opposite. I have seen my generation, in my opinion, be disrespectful to the younger ones because they're different.
Yeah.
And it's the old get off my lawn syndrome, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I've never felt from a younger kinkster like, you shouldn't be that way. I feel very accepted by younger guys.
I've been in those shoes though of someone of an older generation upset that I was in puppy gear at a bar night that was leather, and they told me that I should get out of their way because I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I've quite literally had that happen when I was just getting into the scene too.
Oh, yeah.
And granted, that person did not seem to be having a good night. They might have had a few too many drinks and they were annoyed by the puppies in the bar. But I've never seen a younger person like getting in an older person's face and being like, "You're the problem."
I think we've adapted, and we love the puppies now, but it was...
Say that into the camera when you say that.
I think we've adapted, and we love the puppies now. We love puppies. But there was a learning curve. And any change, there's time to adapt, and you have to allow older people to adapt and get used to something.
Get with the times.
I know, we're not as quick as you. Not quick.
Anytime social change happens, it's messy.
Yeah.
And then it kind of evens out. But so there was that initial period of what is this? And then now it's like, oh, the puppies.
You called me messy and then the fire went out. I have to say. While times do change and some positives come from that, Silver asks, what old guard traditions do you wish were still very common practice today?
Getting Daddy a drink as soon as you saw him. Yeah, thank you, puppy. Well done. We used to have rules about leather bars of not wearing tennis shoes or cologne. I wish we'd have those, but that back, I do miss that.
You know what I miss? Leather dinner parties.
Oh.
I know that sounds strange, but guys would get together and the subs would serve the doms and everybody would be in high gear, and it was one of the few times I really enjoyed kind of rigid protocol.
Yeah.
I miss that, and I don't think we do that much socially.
No, you're right. I
Yeah.
haven't been to a leather dinner in a long
time. And
Yeah.
so not so much the bars and the sex spaces and the places we would go. I don't miss a lot of that.
The
I mean, I do
intimate-
miss that, but in terms of the protocol and that sort of stuff, that's what I miss.
You miss the intimate DPs,
The intimate DPs.
the dinner
yes.
parties. Yeah.
I also miss, we used to play a lot more in our public spaces than we do now.
Yeah, sex in bars and in public spaces was more the norm than the exception.
Yeah.
And I do miss that because I like the spontaneity of it. I like the fact that I can cruise somebody and right then and there have some kind of intimate connection
Have
with
your
them.
dick sucked.
Yeah, that.
Now, you have to decide if you want to go home, who's getting the lift, are you going to get the lift, or
Yeah.
going to my place or your place, have you cleaned out? Like,
Yeah, it's a lot.
it is. And, I know that we're a lot, but we're doing our best. Well then, finally, and thank you guys again for coming on today and just having a nice conversation. One piece of advice you would give the audience. That's going to be my last question for you. What is a piece of advice you would give maybe a younger audience coming up in the queer areas?
I would say don't be scared of the older generation. I know they come off as gruff and tough, but they actually do appreciate if you come up and talk to them. A lot of it is fear-based. As you grow older, you fear you're losing your looks, you feel like you're losing your mojo. And so a lot of that resistance is fear-based. And if you can see through that and get past that and talk to them and learn about the history, you can make it quite a good friendship.
Yeah. My best piece of advice would be to not care what other people think as much. I know we've said that already,
It's easier said than done.
but it is easier said than done. And I think in this era of social media and people that want to sometimes attack others just for an opinion, I think that it's really easy to sort of take that on and try to be something that you're not. You try to appease them. Don't. Appease yourself. Be consensual, be polite, be kind, but be whoever the fuck you want to be.
And to that, I'd say, just do it. You're going to make mistakes. Don't let the fear of even getting involved, as they've kind of said, don't let that fear of getting involved stop you from just getting involved whatsoever. Because you'll just sit back and you'll stay on social media and you'll get so much FOMO, and it's not fun. What did they call FOMO back in the day?
What did they call FOMO?
I don't know. I don't ever remember experiencing FOMO.
Well, for one, we couldn't see what other people were doing.
Right. See, that's the reason. We didn't have Instagram when everybody was putting their vacation.
We had no
You didn't have
FOMO.
Instagram back in the day? How did you tag your food online?
Yeah, so if we happened to be in a bar, we weren't worried about what somebody was doing in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
Nobody was looking.
Do you remember when you'd come back from vacation and they did a slideshow? They would project their pictures. That was
Like on Instagram when you swipe to the
No,
side,
no.
there's more than one.
They'd have you come over and watch their pictures on the wall.
Everybody had a friend that would make you sit down and watch 2 hours of their vacation to something.
Oh, see, I have friends that you come over and they start just playing their YouTube playlist, hoping that you'll appreciate their content. Don't be that friend, because sometimes your friends don't have the same tastes in YouTube, But if you do have friends that haven't seen our channel, you can absolutely share it. And if you're getting down and dirty, whether it's in a bar, at home, or not, always have a safe word. And today's safe word, Race, is...
Gobbledygook.
Couple.
I don't know where that came from.
I was
but
going to say protocol-y.
I was just trying to think of something different.
If you guys do have more questions for these two, or just for us in general, please leave those in the comments down below.
If you like ringing bells, ring that bell.
Tell them to subscribe. Tell them to subscribe.
Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell.
And we will see you all next time. Bye! But if you'd like to buy a shirt, we have our merch down below. We have a merch shelf finally. It only took 7 years. No, you can keep moving. This is the end card. You can be silly during the end card. Daddy, be silly.
Ah!